Soto and Officer Pruitt's body cam footage, but from your perspective, what did you observe about Hannah's condition when you approached her?
All right, I'm going to take an actual dab. Let me break this little chunk of dime got left in half. Real quick. Break off a piece to some degree here. Yeah, all right. I'm ready whenever. Bucket's still nice and hot. I got a little pebble. Cheers.
Her eyes were open. She was flush, pale. In my professional opinion, it did not look well.
Okay. Did you observe any injuries on her at any point?
I did. There was a bloody T-shirt that was compressed against her neck, in which blood was coming from, as well. There was a blood-soaked mattress that she was laying on.
Okay. Did you ever visualize any kind of wounds on her while you were trying to render aid?
I saw a pool of blood that was coagulating on the neck area when I kind of peered at it. So that's where I assumed the wound would be, but I never could kind of see it to see where the wound was. Okay.
And you indicated that her eyes were open and that she was flush. Did you see any signs of life in her when you were trying to render aid?
No, I did not see any chest rise. I flicked the feet to see with any startle movement, and there was none.
Okay. And what did you do to try to render aid?
I continued to hold the neck area, then also understanding the facts of the call and how much blood was lost and how much time it had been. I knew that blood had to get circulated as well, because in a certain amount of time there can also be brain damage.
Okay.
So I was trying to do compressions as well.
Okay.
As well as hold the neck area.
All right. And did you continue to do that until EMS arrived?
I did.
All right. And do you know who took over from you to try to render aid to Hannah?
Cherokee County EMS personnel. I do not know their names.
Okay. And after Hannah was taken by Cherokee EMS, what was your remaining role?
So when Cherokee County got there, they took over aid. From there, we tried to clear back people to make a clear path for Hannah and Chloe to get out of the residence for EMS personnel.
Okay. And did you speak to any of the parties or identify any of the parties on scene while you were there?
I did.
Okay. Who did you speak to?
I speak briefly to Mr. Benjamin. I spoke to a Miss Jessica Cathigan, subject, as well as a Sarah Sides.
Okay. And were you involved in, or who was the case agent tasked with investigating this case?
I believe it was Detective Cruz.
Okay. Can you explain to the jury a little bit about the role of patrol and first responding officers versus criminal investigations?
So obviously on patrol, when you respond to a scene like that, it's very chaotic. You really don't know what's going on. So your job is to try to, one, preserve life, preserve evidence, and then also try to gather as much information as you can. You try to separate parties. And then in a call like this, when detectives come out, they go more in depth with the call, and we assist from there.
Okay. Tell me what you mean by separate the parties and what you did in this case.
So with Jessica, Sarah, and Gerald, who was also on scene, I know Jason Spillers was with Officer Pruitt, and Sergeant Soto would talk with Benjamin. And so I went downstairs. I made sure the females were separated. That way, there was no talking. There was no corroborating of stories or probably sometimes misremembering information.
Okay. Is that something that is routinely done until people can be interviewed about what exactly happened?
Yes, for basic investigatory purposes, you always try to separate parties.
Okay. So.
All right. So yeah,
was with Benjamin. Was he in a separate room talking to Benjamin?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay. And then you indicated that Officer Pruitt was with Jason Spillers.
That's correct.
And then you went and separated who?
Jessica Cathigan, I believe her name was, and then Sarah Sile.
Okay. And where was Jerry, the homeowner, at that time?
Jerry was kind of walking around. He'd kind of be in one room or be outside, and then kind of go back in. And as more officers arrived, we were able to have more officers stay with one party, stay with this party, stay with this party.
Okay.
But my initial, until there was more officers there, was try to make sure that they weren't talking as much.
Was that pretty immediate, the separation of the parties, after Hannah and Chloe were taken by Cherokee EMS?
Yes.
Okay. And then what information do you have about who was taken to Canton Police Department to be interviewed?
I escorted Sarah Stiles to the Canton Police Department.
Okay. Were all the parties escorted separately?
Yes.
Okay. Was that for the purpose of being interviewed by Detective Cruz?
Yes, and once again, obviously you don't want the parties, riding in the same car, so just to, create separation and to make sure that there's the full truth in that.
Yeah, I can understand that though.
All right, I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Let's cut away.
Good afternoon.
I just have one question for you. You testified today that you didn't know Mr. Benjamin Ben Michael prior to this?
No, I knew him.
Okay, how did you know him?
Well, not, I won't say knew him. I was on a call with him about 2 years prior, in which his RV got, he was backing down the road, and it got stuck because the driveway was steep, and his RV got stuck on the road. And when I went out there with him, about 4 feet in the road maybe, and when I went out there with him, and I ran his tag, his RV didn't have insurance. And I advised him, I used my officer discretion at that time to say, hey man, there's no damage, but you need to pull this RV back in the driveway and get insurance.
Okay, so it was for a traffic type situation?
Yes.
Did not involve Ms. Driver, correct?
Miss who?
Ms. Driver?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Any reason to keep the witness?
No, Your Honor.
You can be excused, thank you. Call your next witness, please.
Brooke Ice.
Drop.
You can just raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I swear.
Okay, you can have a seat. Can you state your name?
Brooke Elizabeth Ice.
All right, and Ms. Ice, how are you employed?
I am a firefighter paramedic with Cherokee County Fire and Emergency Services.
All right, and how long have you been in that capacity?
8 years, a couple of days ago.
All right, and I want to get a little bit of information from you just to sort of background purposes for the jury about when somebody makes a 911 call and fire and rescue comes out, what that response looks like in terms of ambulances or fire trucks, and what's your role in that?
Okay, so what comes out to a medical call is what you're asking? Typically on every medical call in Cherokee County, a fire engine, some people call it a fire truck, and an ambulance come out together. We're a combination department, so some days I'm on the ambulance, some days I'm on the fire engine. So every medical call gets a fire engine and an ambulance, sometimes even more if there's multiple patients or it's a wreck or something like that.
Okay, so you may potentially be on either the fire engine or the ambulance, depending
Yes,
on?
depends on the day.
Okay, and I want to talk to you specifically about December the 8th of 2020. Do you recall a response to 215 Mountain Vista Boulevard here in Canton?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, tell me what information you received and when in terms of the need to respond.
I'm not clear on the time. I remember it was in the afternoon, and we have an app on our phone that allows us to get calls. So an app notified us and said that a person stabbed had come out at this address, and it gives us a direct Google address in order to go to it. And on our way there, we have a laptop in the engine. It's called a mobile data terminal, or MDT as we call it, and it updates with information as the 911 call taker is talking to the person who called 911. And I distinctly remember my officer turning back and telling us that a female had left the scene, an adult female had left the scene. So he turned around and told all of us that, and that Canton PD was asking for us to come in immediately. Sometimes we stage, depends on the call, but if a cop determines that it's unsafe for us to be on the scene, they will ask for us to what's called stage. And that just means we stage a mile away from the scene. But on this call, we didn't stage at all. They asked for us to come in.
Okay, and if they ask for you to come in and not stage, is that sort of an indicator that's more?
Usually means there's a life-threatening, like something that they can't handle, and that's why they need medical assistance,
Okay.
typically.
All right. So on this particular
Interesting.
day, you were on an
Okay.
ambulance.
I was riding backwards. I was the third person on an engine, engine 3.
All right. And who was with you on your engine?
Max Post was driving that day, and then Sergeant Morgan at the time was riding in the front, and I was in the back.
Okay. And was there more from Cherokee Fire and Rescue than just your engine that responded?
Yes, at the time, we were going through some different mapping distinctions within territories. So this address is at the edge of our territory and the edge of the downtown Canton station, Station 16. So neither of us knew which one needed to go, so both fire engines went. And then our typical ambulances that would have responded normally were not in service. So we had more ambulances coming from farther away because the 2 ambulances that were supposed to go weren't there. So ended up being 2 engines on this scene and 2 ambulances eventually.
Okay.
But initially it was just 1 ambulance.
All right. And in terms of you said you were riding backwards on the engines. How did you, in responding to this call, assign each person a role, or what was your role?
So the driver is obviously worried about managing getting around cop cars. The officer is setting up, like talking to 911. And then my job was to get ready to get the medical equipment and then get out of the truck as quickly as possible to go and render aid.
Okay.
So that was my role.
So when you're the, what do you call it, backwards?
Backwards or extra firefighter.
When you're the backwards rider in that situation, did you know that you were going to take lead
Yes.
once you arrived on scene?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you do when you got there? Were you the first engine to arrive?
Yes, you were.
Okay. And what happened when you got there?
I got out of the truck and went up the driveway, and I met with a man in a driveway who was smoking a cigarette. I remember that distinctly. And he just stated to me, it's upstairs, down the hall to the left.
Okay.
and that's when I entered the house.
Do you know who that man was?
No.
Okay. And he said upstairs, down the hall, and to the left. And where did you proceed at that time?
Went into the house. The stairwell to the hallway was in the living room. Went upstairs. There was another man in the hallway, and I pushed past him to get to the end of on the left in the hallway, and then that's when I went in, and there were 2 officers in there that I could see, and then the infant.
Okay. When you entered the room, did you know that there were 2 people in need of
No.
aid? Okay. And when you learned that, how did that impact the needs?
So we only had 1 ambulance going at that time because between dispatch and us, there must have been a miscommunication of we didn't know how many patients there were on scene. So until going into the room, we only had 1 ambulance coming. And so how that changed is I clearly realized that we were needing more resources, so we needed another ambulance. So we had to call for another ambulance, which was even further away, to come and help us with the second patient.
And in terms of the individuals in the room needing aid, what did you observe about them?
So the first thing I noticed was Canton police officer was doing CPR on the infant. I believe that at the time I thought I saw her take her last breath. Could have been from doing CPR. When you do CPR, it does make the body move, especially with infants. And then as I was going around the corner and kneeling, I noticed the adult and that there was a good amount of bleeding around on the floor. And then I believe the police officer told me that she was also injured. So I was trying to figure out what was going on. Told the camp police, I handed him a trauma dressing, and then told him just to apply pressure to the adult. And then we kind of had to figure out what to do with the infant.
Okay. And did you primarily shift your attention to rendering aid to the infant?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you take over immediately after the Canton officer that was doing CPR?
Not immediately. Another firefighter from the Engine 16 got in there with me, and then he picked up the baby. I was doing CPR, and then what happened next was another man tried to enter the room, and firefighter Dobson and I, who was the firefighter off Engine 16, felt that the scene had gotten too unsafe for us as firefighters. So we decided to remove the infant from the room and from the house in order to try to get to the ambulance.
Okay. And was that feeling based upon like too many people being there and you not knowing who they were, or?
We didn't know the full extent of who was who, so to me it felt like we were in danger.
Okay. Did you at any time become aware of the presence of any type of weapon?
No, I was told later that by my driver of the engine, Max Post, that I was about to kneel on a knife, and I didn't know this. I was too busy trying to give instructions to the police officer, so
Ooh.
Okay.
I didn't know about that at all.
Okay. And that was
That's-
Max Post, he was on the engine with me that day.
Okay. And
Oh, we need a little Grinch.
did you kneel down beside the bed to render aid?
I kneeled by the adult patient,
Okay.
like right next door.
Okay. And how long were you in the room with all the parties before you all scooped up the baby and left?
I don't know, maybe it felt like a long time, but I'd guess not less than 5 minutes.
Okay. And who transported the baby to the ambulance?
Myself, firefighter Dobson, and then we met an ambulance called Squad 5, and they barely got out of the truck. The driver never got out of his seat, and then the paramedic got out, and he got into the ambulance with us. We carried the baby down to the end of the driveway.
Okay. And who was lead in terms of caring for Hannah at that time?
It depends. We were kind of co-sharing it. Hines is as the primary lead paramedic on the ambulance. He's primarily in charge, but I'd given him the story. So in my report, I just stated that I transferred care to him, and then we both kind of took lead.
Okay. Were you with her present in the ambulance?
Yes.
For transport?
Yes.
After you left the room, the jury's seen some of the body cam where you all responded and picked up the baby and left, but can you tell them sort of what life-saving measures or aid that you rendered to Hannah en route to the hospital?
We applied pressure to the neck, but she had
Heavy
stopped breathing
duty
at that point, so
tire.
we just put like small 4x4s on her neck, and then we did CPR, and we put her on pads, cardiac pads, in order to kind of see her rhythm, which was asystole. And asystole just means it's like a flat line, so there was no electrical activity going on in her heart.
Okay.
And that's pretty much
I'll take this tire for now.
because it's a very short drive from the address to Northside Cherokee.
Okay, and that was gonna be my next question. You were taking her to Northside Cherokee?
Yes.
What was the decision to take her to Northside Cherokee versus like Kennestone or one of the other hospitals?
Kennestone probably would have been about 20 minutes, and when you're in a cardiac arrest situation where you need like a secure airway, typically we're told in our protocols in order to go to the nearest hospital, so a doctor can try to secure an airway or possibly get the patient back much quicker than it would be to go all the way to Kennestone.
Heavy duty tire is what we need.
Did you all, for the duration of the ride, continue CPR
Yes.
or chest compressions? Who was doing that?
Dobson was, and then I would alternate with him.
Okay. And what does that look like on an infant?
Typically, you either can use 2 hands and use the thumb encircling, or you use 2 fingers. I use 2 fingers, and then you're just continuously pumping on her chest.
And so you said yourself and Dobson were swapping off doing that for her. And how long was that drive from 215 to Northside Cherokee?
It's probably running lights and sirens. It's a 3-minute. I mean, it's not very far. 3-4 minute drive.
Okay. And did you enter the hospital
Yes.
when you arrived? And what happened at that point?
So they put us into a small room instead of the bigger rooms that are meant for cardiac arrest. They put us into like a small patient room, and it got pretty crowded in there. We continued CPR and help them while they were getting things set up because we had to tell them, they had a very short notice to know that it was coming in.
Okay.
Okay.
That CPR was being done when you entered the room, and that continued until you handed her off to the ER staff.
Mm-hmm.
In terms
Can
of
you
medical
just
training
switch
and
these out?
do you have any appreciation for when you believe that Hannah was deceased?
I believe Hannah was deceased by the time we left the house. Yeah.
And why do you not discontinue your life-saving efforts even when you feel that that's the
We want to try and give our absolute best, and we, with any patient, doesn't matter. We want to absolutely try to give them their best shot and get them to definitive care.
And then in terms of the handoff to ER staff, what was your role in that?
I didn't give the report. I was in there when we were kind of like jumping off of each other because I was the only one on the ambulance besides Dobson that had been in the house. I was the first one, so they were asking me questions of like, did you see what did this? What's the wound to the neck? And was mostly they asked if she had any rhythm, if she was breathing on her own and stuff like that. And she was not breathing on her own. She was in a systole, and
Okay.
the wound stopped bleeding at that point.
Okay. And what does the wound stop bleeding mean?
It just means there's no more blood. Like within an infant's body, there's not a whole lot of blood in general, so she probably bled out by the time we got out of the house.
Nothing further. Thank you.
Mr. Rutherford.
That's okay.
You indicated that the call that you had received, the information was that it was only one individual that you initially thought you were responding to?
That's correct.
Okay. And that you didn't know that there was a second patient, I think is what you called her, until you arrived on scene?
Not until I got into the room.
Okay. And at that point, I think is it another partner or something also began assisting with the care of that patient, and you went straight to Hannah?
Yes, the police officer was actually helping us out because he was the nearest one to the adult patient. And then after I left, I assumed that my partners came in.
Okay. When you were working on your patient, Hannah, did you happen to notice whether or not Ms. Driver and Hannah's hands were together, or did you make any observations about that?
No, no.
Thank you. No other questions?
Any redirect? Any reason to keep the witness?
Yeah, she may be excused.
You can be excused. Thank you, ma'am. Excuse me. Call your next witness, please.
Tom Priest. Tom Priest.
There we go.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear from the evidence you about to present this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Go ahead and have a seat. State your full name for the record, please.
Tom Priest,
Where do you work?
City Camp Police Department.
Are you a post-certified peace officer in the state of Georgia?
Yes, I am.
Tell the jury, if you would, what it means to be post-certified in this state.
You go through certified training at the state of Georgia, 10 weeks worth of training.
Where'd you go to the academy?
You want to go to the academy at the old Kennesaw Post, by Kennesaw Mountain,
What year was that?
2000.
Where all have you worked as a police officer?
Just Canton.
When you first started at Canton, what kind of work did you do?
I work UPD the road,
Now, we know we have our acronyms and things like that. What is UPD?
Uniform Patrol Division.
And when you did that, what type of duties and things did you do?
Cool. I got my heavy duty stuff I was trying to replace.
Did you ever get promoted or move up and do different type of work at the police department?
Was promoted to detective
And when did you start doing that?
March of 2013.
And when you become a detective, how many people are detectives at the police department today?
Today we have 5 detectives.
If you can just kind of tell the jury, Canton Police Department, tell them how big it is, how many people we have, how many active investigators or detectives that we have on a working basis now.
Camp Police Department, we have, I believe, about 55 sworn officers. We've got 5 detectives in our unit, 2 sergeants, a lieutenant, and a captain.
And where do you rank in the supervisory capacity of the police department?
I'm not a supervisor.
Do you work with other people that, besides just investigators? You work with the patrol and other people at the police department?
Yes.
Now, does the PD's office have actually like a crime scene unit like the sheriff's office does?
No, we do not.
When part of your training, do you have to get like continuing education and things like that?
Yes.
Do you specialize in any type of training or any type of police work?
As far as
Do you have any specialties that you focus on, or is it pretty much whatever? You're more of a general police officer.
we in detectives at Canton, we try to specialize, but we don't have specialized units. One week you might have a shoplifting case, or you might have a homicide case, or a child molestation case. You just never know what's going to come up.
And part of your duties as you're there, if you have crime scene stuff, you have to take photographs or process a scene. Do you do that sometimes?
Yes.
If you tell the jury what it means when I say
Let's go see if there's any up.
What does that involve?
That involves looking at the scene, seeing what you can visually see, photographing the scene, collecting evidence, looking for witnesses.
Do you have any specialized training to process a crime scene?
Other than basic crime scene processing, no.
So you had training on taking photographs?
Yes.
Training on lifting fingerprints?
Yes.
And training on kind of just drawing diagrams or just this marking what the scene looks like?
Yes.
Now, does the sheriff's office have more people that are more dedicated to processing crime scenes?
Yes.
When you get to call to a scene and the police department responds, like a major scene like this, how many people typically respond?
It depends on the incident.
I'm turning attention to probably Tuesday, December the 8th, 2020. I believe the 911 cars were 2:26 p.m. Did you get called out to 215 Mountain Vista Boulevard in Canton?
Yes, I was one responding.
What county was this residence in?
Cherokee County.
Tell the jury when you got called in, where did you come from and what did you see when you first got there?
Came from the Canton Police Department, which is right across the street, 51 Elizabeth Street. Drove to the scene. By the time I got there, I spoke with Sergeant Soto, gave me a rundown of what was going on.
When you arrived on the scene, had the child had already been transported to the hospital?
Yes.
Who was there when you were there, as regards to the same rate of persons, not law enforcement?
There was two or three males, and one female, I believe, are still there.
Did you see the defendant clothes driver? Was she there when you arrived?
No.
When you got to the scene, at some point, did you go inside?
Yes, I did.
Did you have an opportunity to view the residence and see what was going on?
Yes.
Tell the jury what you remember seeing when you first saw it.
I was led upstairs to the room where the incident occurred and saw large amounts of blood on the bed and on the floor, and I also observed a knife on the floor.
Did you have an opportunity to look at some photographs in this case?
Yes, I took some photographs of it.
Did you have an opportunity to look at some photographs that were taken aerial photographs from Google Maps and things like that?
Yes.
May I approach the witness? Yes. I'm handing with remarks States Exhibits 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. These are Google photographs of the residence. Look at those and see if they're fair enough photographs.
They are.
Just this time I tendered evidence, States Exhibits 5 through 9.
No objection.
They are admitted.
Judge, may I have permission to post those? Thank you.
All right, nice little cleanup.
Start with States Exhibit 5. It should pop up on your screen. States 5, what are we looking at here?
That's like a Google map showing a direct route from the courthouse here to the incident residence.
Okay, as you look at States 5 up on the left, is that indicating where the courthouse is?
Yes.
And then down towards the bottom, there's a little red mark or circle indicating where the scene was. Is that right?
Yes.
About how far is that from the courthouse as we stand today?
3.3 miles.
Now, this is State 6. The scene itself, what type of residential area is this in the city? Is it a suburb or
It's
subdivision?
a single home residential area.
All right, State 6, what do we have here?
That's an over aerial view of the whole subdivision.
Now, I'm going to take my marker. You see my hand down here?
Yes.
The indicator.
Yes.
Is this the residence, the scene that we're talking about?
Yes, it is.
And then a closer view, State 7. Is this the scene here?
Yes, that's an aerial view of the residence.
State 8, what are we looking at here?
The front of the residence.
How would you describe this neighborhood?
Quiet.
Y'all get many calls there?
No.
States 9, what are we looking at here?
That's the side driveway up to the residence.
When you went in to the residence, did you go upstairs first or did you do something else?
I walked inside the residence and then I was directed upstairs where it happened.
And if you were to walk in this residence, if you go up the steps, am I correct that you actually take a left and go down the hallway?
If you're coming through the front door, yes. I believe also through the side door to the garage.
So eventually, when you get upstairs, the room that we're talking about where the death occurred is upstairs, is that
Yes,
right?
it is.
Did you have a chance to go into that room?
Yes, I did.
Tell the jury what you remember about the room.
It was a small room. It wasn't very big, like a standard sized bedroom. There was a mattress on the floor. There was really no other furniture around, but there was large amounts of blood on the bed and on the floor, and a knife on the floor.
Were you asked to take any photographs of the scene?
Yes.
And did you do that?
Yes, I did.
May I approach you on? These are State Exhibits 10 through 19. See if these are fair and accurate photographs of the photos you took of the scene on December 8th, 2020. States Exhibit 10 through 19, fair and accurate photographs of the room where the stabbing took place.
Yes, it is.
Just this time I tendered evidence 10 through 19.
10 through 19 are admitted.
May I post them, Your Honor? All right, this is States 10. Tell the jury what we're looking at here.
That's looking into the bedroom from the hallway.
Did you know, what information did you know about what had occurred in this room before you got there?
That there was a baby that was critically injured and somebody else had been injured.
Did you know anything about how entry was made into this room by the people?
They made forced entry.
And in Stage 10, you took a picture of the door frame. Why did you do that?
Because it shows a break in the door frame, and somebody had to force themselves into the bedroom.
Stage 11, is this another picture of the door frame?
Yes, it is.
And what is it showing here?
It's showing the forced entry and the break of the door frame.
Stage 12, did you take a photograph of the bottom part of the door?
The piece where the doorknob goes into to secure the door shut down on the floor, just showing that the frame had been broken.
Stage
I hope
13,
this
is that
fucking
bottom part of the room,
works.
is that right?
Yes.
And when you take photographs, do you sometimes have a method that you do? Or do you go from like left to right or right to left, or do you just kind of take photographs as you see things?
You do overseeing it, you go either left or right to left.
And now, for the record, in Stage 13, what do we see in this photograph here?
There's a knife laying on the floor and a bunch of medical supplies, trash on the floor and blood stain.
The knife, is that how when you arrived it was in the room?
Yes, it is.
Stage 14, kind of moving to the right, is that correct?
Yes.
What do we have here?
Picture of the mattress bed on the floor with blood.
Outside of these items that you see in the room, is this how the room was when you arrived?
Yes, it is.
Not much else in it besides these things?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Did you know where anything occurred in this room?
I did not.
You're just taking it as it's
Okay.
Yes.
Full.
On Stage 15, what do we have here?
And that's full.
Large amounts of blood, towel, and a set of keys.
You go find spare engine parts.
Stage 16,
As view looking down onto the mattress with the blood and the towel.
Stage 17, what is this one?
A little bit further back view, also showing which was, I believe, was a diaper bag, also on the floor.
Stage 18, what do we have here?
Just a different view of it, and then you also see more of the blood in front of the mattress and baby wipes.
And then the last one, this section, Stage 19.
That's looking towards the door, towards the hallway of the room.
Your man approach.
Yes.
Starting with Energy Stage Exhibit 20 and 21, see those are fair and accurate photographs of the knife that you collected or found in this case.
It is.
Judge, at this time, I turn to evidence Stage Exhibits 20 and 21.
No objection.
Admitted.
Permission to publish, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's look at Stage 20. When you found the knife, do you do anything? Do you touch it, move it, do anything like that, or what's your procedure when finding evidence?
We don't touch it until it's photographed and collected properly.
Again, at this point, you didn't know who used the knife or how it was used or anything basic beyond just what your general information was?
I did not.
Stage 21. What do we have in this picture?
The knife with the
Trying to go back to the base.
This knife that was collected, at some point, were you asked to, I guess, stop what you were doing and things would be turned over to the sheriff's office?
Yes.
Who was it turned over to, do you know?
The Cherokee County Sheriff's Office Crime Scene Unit.
Do you know which investigator or crime scene technician came and processed it?
Officer Shaw, our Deputy Shaw.
Did you work with him before?
Yes, I have.
Have y'all worked together for years, I guess?
Yes.
Now, what was the reason for the sheriff's office being called in, do you know?
It's just they have more equipment and their training is more detailed than the training we have for processing a crime scene like that.
Now, we're looking at this case many years after the fact, but at the time that you're at the scene, is it fair to say that you didn't know whether or not there's going to have to be a lot of special processing by a crime scene unit? Is that why they're brought in, basically?
Yes.
So you know fingerprints or other type of specialty knowledge or training was going to be needed?
Yes.
And when you were there, though, before that happened, did all the evidence that was collected by crime scene technician Shaw, was all that evidence, including the knife and everything else, was that turned over to you?
Yes.
And did y'all then take that back and secure it at the police department?
Yes.
Did you follow your proper procedures for maintaining the chain of custody, maintaining the security and integrity of evidence when you did that?
Yes.
To your knowledge, was there any issues of tampering with evidence or the mishandling evidence or anything like that?
No.
Just you followed all the procedures and then documented that, including any evidence that was taken to the crime lab?
Yes.
Now, when you're there at some point, obviously you talked to two men, is that right?
Yes.
And when you talked to the gentleman, do you remember meeting with Jason Spillers?
Yes.
And do you remember meeting with Brian Joyce or Benjamin Ben Michael?
Yes.
And tell the jury kind of where they were at when you talked to them.
They had been separated. Mr. Ben Michael was in another room being interviewed by Sergeant Soto.
I want to start with Jason Spillers, if that's all right. You're on my approach again. Stacy did it 22, 23, and 24. See if you recognize those photographs as some that you've taken in this case.
They are.
Are they fair enough photographs of Jason Spillers at the scene on December 8, 2020?
They are.
Can I enter these into evidence now?
No objection.
You're admitted.
Permission to publish, Your Honor?
Go ahead.
All right, let's look at stage 22. This is Jason Spillers, is that right?
Yes.
Why did you take this photograph?
He had blood on his face and his forehead there.
Now, as we look at this photograph, kind of describe, if you could, for the record, you say it's on his forehead, but where all over the forehead is it?
The upper part of his forehead.
Do you know how that blood got there?
No, I don't.
Stage 23, what are we looking at here?
The palm side of his hands and his arms were cut with blood.
Stage 24, what do we have here?
It was the top side of his hands and arms with blood
Why did you take these photographs?
because of the blood all over his body, his arms.
And finally, did you have an opportunity to meet with Brian Joyce and Jonathan Michael and take photographs of how he appeared after the stabbing?
Yes.
How may I approach? This is Stage Exhibit 25 through 28. Let's go over those and see if those are photographs of Brian Joyce.